Hey guys, welcome to another one of a video when we are covering travel news relating to the coronavirus or COVID-19 in New Zealand. It is currently the 21st of March 2020. It's about 5 p.m. and there has been some major development in New Zealand this week that will affect your travels in New Zealand in major ways. So keep watching. Okay, so just to make it really clear what we're going to be doing during this video, we are going to be pulling information directly from the Ministry of Health website as well as from Immigration New Zealand. So everything we want to give you right now is pure factual information. There is none of this fake news stuff or all this absolutely crazy rumors that are going on social media. And around the end of the video, we are going to be answering questions that we received from you guys relating to the coronavirus. You probably guessed that we received hundreds of questions about this situation, and I will make it very clear when we start answering your questions, because at this point there may be a bit more of our opinion and what we would do in this situation and all that. So as soon as we stop stating facts from the New Zealand government, we will make that really clear so you guys know. Anyway, we're going to get started with the current situation about the coronavirus in New Zealand.
Yeah, so according to the Ministry of Health of New Zealand, currently with today's date, the 21st of March, New Zealand has 52 confirmed cases of COVID-19. Obviously, there's some border measures that are in place at this time. For instance, travellers who have arrived in New Zealand within the last 14 days are being asked to self-isolate. If you have been overseas within the last 14 days and develop a fever, cough or shortness of breath, you are asked to call the Healthline, and we'll put details of the Healthline phone number in the description below. So new border measures announced. The government has announced that there are further border measures restricting entry to New Zealand. So from the 19th of March, the new restriction has been that only New Zealand citizens and their children and partners are permitted to enter New Zealand. And there are a few exemptions and stuff connected to that, which we'll go through a little bit later.
Alright, so we are going to keep going with a couple of specific topical pages from the Ministry of Health and covering a few different aspects of your journey in New Zealand and how you may be affected. So the first thing we would like to cover is international travel. So and again, I'm going to go through the Ministry of Health website right now with you guys. So the latest border restrictions, as Laura mentioned, are so the New Zealand government made further travel restrictions to slow the spread of COVID-19 virus. New Zealand's border are being closed to almost all travelers from midnight on Thursday the 19th of March 2020. All affected travelers must have checked in for their flight to New Zealand by this time. So if you are in a flight to New Zealand and you checked in for your flight to New Zealand by that deadline, then you will still be able to enter New Zealand. But anything after that, you will not be able to enter New Zealand. Exception can be made on a case-by-case basis by Immigration New Zealand for humanitarian reasons, health and other essential workers, citizens of Samoa and Tonga for essential travels to New Zealand, and if the holder of a visa who is the partner of or dependent of a temporary work or student visa holder and who normally lives in New Zealand and is currently in New Zealand. No other foreign traveller can now enter New Zealand, and returning residents and citizens must isolate themselves for 14 days upon arrival. Now, if you are currently in New Zealand and you're wondering, should you travel overseas? It states the New Zealanders are advised not to travel overseas at this time. The New Zealand government has raised this travel advice to do not travel, which is the highest level, regardless of the destination. It is also urging any New Zealanders currently traveling overseas to return home while commercial options remain available. There are extensive border restrictions in place around the world and increasingly limited transport options. New Zealanders are advised to register their details with the Safe Travel website and the rest mostly pertain to New Zealanders. The next thing that we want to mention is domestic travel. So domestic travel relates to traveling within New Zealand. Like, should you still kind of travel around New Zealand?
Yeah.
What is the advice there?
So the advice from the New Zealand government is that taking domestic flight is okay, but if you are feeling unwell, particularly with COVID-19 symptoms like cough, shortness of breath or fever, or if you're sneezing or have a runny nose, then it's best to stay at home. If you are on a flight, it is particularly important that you cough or sneeze into the crook of your elbow, and where possible, carry hand sanitizer and tissues. And if it's possible, sit in a window seat in a row by yourself.
Here you go. So that's basically all the advice pertaining to travelers from the Ministry of Health. Now, there is a lot of uncertainty coming around the visa portion of kind of traveling in New Zealand, both from people which had visas and were planning on coming into New Zealand, as well as people which are currently in New Zealand with a visa. So because there is so much uncertainty, we pulled also some information directly from Immigration New Zealand, and we're going to cover those one right now. So same thing, all the information we're going to give you right now are directly from the Ministry of Immigration of New Zealand. So, the COVID-19 update about the temporary border closures states that the New Zealand government has further strengthened travel restrictions, closing our borders to almost all travellers as of midnight on Thursday, 19th of March 2020. So we know all that. New Zealand citizen, permanent residents, resident with valid travel conditions, and their immediate family, partners or spouse, legal guardians and dependent children under the age of 24 can still come to New Zealand. Immediate family must have a valid visa or NZDT and travel with the New Zealand citizen or resident family member on the same flight to New Zealand. Australian citizen and permanent resident who normally live in New Zealand can also return to New Zealand. Now, the information regarding transiting. Australian citizens, resident and immediate family, partner, spouse, legal guardian and dependent children under the age of 24 are able to transit New Zealand to Australia. Transiting travellers must remain airside and cannot enter New Zealand. That means you have only a very small section of the airport basically that you can go for. New Zealand citizens, resident and immediate family, again partner, legal guardian and dependent children who normally live in Australia are able to transit New Zealand to return to Australia. If you want to transit, you need to remain airside and do not enter New Zealand. If you enter New Zealand, you will be required to self-isolate. New Zealand citizen, permanent resident who normally live in New Zealand and immediate family, again partner, legal guardian and dependent children, are able to transit Australia to New Zealand. Transiting travellers must remain airside and cannot enter Australia. Finally, New Zealanders overseas should contact the airline and other travel provider for the most up-to-date information about flight availability. We have seen a lot of flight cancellation going on lately. New Zealanders should also contact their travel agent or airline if they are traveling from or transiting through areas affected by border measures. You should check before booking flights and before boarding them that the country you are transiting through continue to allow transiting passenger and that you remain eligible to enter New Zealand. If you are a New Zealander and you're seeking emergency assistance from your consular, you can reach them by calling +64 99 20 20 20, and if you're in New Zealand it's 0800 30 1030. Alright, so there are some exceptions that can be made on case-by-case basis just by Immigration New Zealand only, and that's for humanitarian reason, health and other essential workers, citizen of Samoa and Tonga for essential travel to New Zealand, and the holder of visitor visa who is the partner or dependent of a temporary worker or student visa holder and who normally lives in New Zealand and is currently in New Zealand. If you have a valid New Zealand visa and you think you may be eligible for an exception, please contact your airline. No other foreign traveller can enter New Zealand. Returning resident and citizen must isolate themselves for 14 days upon arrival. So that's basically kind of a long rundown of the exact rule highlighted in the Immigration New Zealand website, but then they actually go into specifics about traveling to New Zealand and traveling to and from the South Pacific Islands.
Okay, so for travelling to New Zealand, they state that Immigration New Zealand is working with the Ministry of Health and other government agencies to manage the COVID-19 outbreak. These restrictions will be reviewed in 14 days.
So that makes it around the 3rd of April.
Okay. Australian citizens and permanent residents who normally live in New Zealand can still come to New Zealand. All travellers to New Zealand must isolate themselves for 14 days upon arrival. And for travel to and from the Pacific Islands, New Zealand citizens from Tokelau, Cook Islands and Niue travelling to New Zealand must isolate themselves for 14 days upon arrival. Travellers to the South Pacific or to the Pacific Islands must meet the entry requirements of the country they are travelling to. Check flight availability and entry requirements before starting your journey. Health officers are screening travellers from New Zealand to the Pacific Islands. Airlines will not allow any passenger with COVID-19 symptoms to board. All right.
So there are also some health measures in place. So health officers are screening all travelers arriving in New Zealand, and traveler deemed high risk will be assessed. So there is also a red, big bold letter, red warning in this section, and we'll come back to that a little bit later when we start answering a bit of your questions. It says you must obey self-isolation rules and any other government health measures. New visa condition: visa holder who do not comply with instruction from a health officer can be detained and deported, and this applies to every visa in New Zealand. So again, a new visa condition is visa holder who do not comply with the instruction from a health officer can be detained and deported. And spoiler alert for the question we are going to answer, it already has happened to travelers in New Zealand. Alright, so there are also some questions about the visa processing time and as well as getting some information about visa, because maybe some of you guys are in the process of applying for visa and any of that. So what does it say?
Yeah, so Immigration New Zealand states that for visa processing information, Immigration New Zealand's Beijing, Mumbai and Manila offices are temporarily closed. Immigration New Zealand remains committed to minimizing the impact on visa processing times. Residents with expired travel conditions cannot travel to New Zealand. You may apply for reinstatement of a resident visa travel conditions. Immigration New Zealand cannot extend visa durations. Visa fees or levies paid for completed applications will not be refunded or deferred for another visa. You may withdraw an undeclined application. Undecided, sorry.
Alright, do you want to keep going for the next one?
Okay, so in terms of air and maritime crew, air and maritime crew continue to be exempt from the travel restrictions, including from the requirement to self-isolate for 14 days on arrival. And for cruise ships and maritime vessels, cruise ships cannot enter to New Zealand's territorial waters effective from the Saturday the 14th of March 2020. This will remain in place until at least the 30th of June 2020.
Alright, so if you do have questions about your visas or any visa question, you can contact Immigration New Zealand directly, but even in normal times, contacting Immigration New Zealand usually subjects you to between 30 minutes to 1 hour waiting time on the phone, so expect that to be way longer at the moment, so just be prepared for that. The phone number for Immigration New Zealand if you're outside of New Zealand is +64 9952 1679, and if you are in New Zealand is 0508 225 288. Alright, so we're going to dive a little bit more into the different visas that you can have, and it's basically just probably the one question that we just get all the time, and it's the last question on this page right here. And it's about being in New Zealand with a visa. What is happening?
Yeah, so if you're already in New Zealand and have a visa, for instance, that's about to expire, Immigration New Zealand states that we are sympathetic to individuals who are currently in New Zealand and are unable to return to their home country due to the COVID-19 outbreak and current travel restrictions. Individuals who are currently in New Zealand are able to apply for for a further visa, which will be assessed on a case-by-case basis against immigration instructions, taking into account the current COVID-19 outbreak and any relevant travel restrictions.
So this is if you are in New Zealand and you have a visa. Now we're going to cover student visas. So if you have a student visa, the same kind of rule applies. So there is a new visa condition that says that the visa holder who do not comply with the instruction from a health officer can be detained and deported. And there is also rules about self-isolation. Now, for student visa holder, the student visa holder can no longer enter New Zealand. If you are already in New Zealand following Ministry of Health guidelines for self-isolation and are therefore unable to attend classes, contact your education provider urgently. When any reason for absence are confirmed to be genuine, your provider will update your attendance record accordingly, as some student visa have attendance record condition. For visa processing, if you are looking to get a student visa, the same kind of conditions were applying to the previous answer. Immigration New Zealand's Beijing, Mumbai and Manila offices are temporarily closed. Immigration New Zealand remain committed to minimize the impact on visa processing time. The Palmerston North office in New Zealand remains open for student visa processing. Their priority is to process applications from students already in New Zealand who may have visas expiring soon. They will process other applications as resources allow. Immigration New Zealand cannot extend visa duration. Visa fee and levy paid for completed application will not be refunded or deferred to any other visas. And they dive into the fees and funds a little bit more in depth.
Yep, so for fees and funds, students who are applying in New Zealand for another student visa must provide a tuition fee receipt with their applications. If you have financial concerns relating to tuition fees, you should discuss these with your education provider. Immigration New Zealand will consider applications in this situation on a case-by-case basis in consultation with your education provider. Student visa applications provide proof of 15,000 New Zealand dollars of funds per year, pro rata of courses under 36 weeks. It is vitally important that you are able to support yourself financially while in New Zealand.
Okay, then they go through students which are currently overseas. Deferred study and withdrawn application. If you have deferred your study to later in the year or in early 2021 and your visa will remain valid over this period, your education provider should notify Immigration New Zealand. Your file will be updated with this information. Your visa remains valid and your visa travel conditions still apply. If you have a student visa valid until the 31st of March 2020, you will need to apply offshore for a new student visa. Immigration New Zealand cannot extend visa duration. Visa fees and levy paid for completed application will not be refunded or deferred to another visa. And if you decide to cancel your study plans, contact your education provider. If your student visa application has not been processed, you can withdraw that application. Visa fees for withdrawn application will be refunded. You want to go for support?
Okay, for support, when travel restrictions are lifted, let us know your travel plans and your file will be updated accordingly. Any changes to visa conditions will be considered on a case-by-case basis. You can request a change the travel dates of your visa, or you can apply for a new visa once you have a better idea of your new travel dates. Student visa holders or applications who have specific questions about their study plans should contact their education provider.
Alright, so just to wrap up this section where we are giving you straight the information from Immigration New Zealand as well as from the Ministry of Health, we're going to do a quick wrap up and then we're going to answer the question that we received from you guys, and we're also going to give you like what's our take right here. So the New Zealand government has further strengthened travel restriction, closing the New Zealand border to almost all travelers from Thursday the 19th of March 2020 at midnight. New Zealand citizens, permanent residents, residents with valid travel conditions and their immediate family can still come to New Zealand. Immediate family must travel with the New Zealand citizen or resident family member on the same flight to New Zealand. Australian citizens and permanent residents who normally live in New Zealand can also return to New Zealand. In addition, Australian citizens, residents and immediate family are able to transit New Zealand to Australia. Exception can be made on a case-by-case basis by Immigration New Zealand for humanitarian reasons, health and other essential workers, citizens of Samoa and Tonga for essential travel to New Zealand, and the holder of a visitor visa with the partner of a dependent of a temporary work or student visa holder and who normally lives in New Zealand and is currently in New Zealand. Immigration New Zealand cannot extend visa duration. If your travel plan has changed due to the travel restrictions, visa holders can request a change to their travel date or apply for a new visa. Visa fees and or levies paid will not for not completed application will not be refunded or deferred to another visa. Finally, individuals which are currently in New Zealand and are able to apply for further visas, which will be assessed on a case-by-case basis against immigration instructions, taking into account the current COVID-19 outbreak and any relevant travel restrictions. All those things are not my mouthful. And if you do have any question, you can call Immigration New Zealand on +649 952 1679 if you're outside of New Zealand, and if you are in New Zealand it's 0508 225 288. And here you go, that's basically all the information that we have from the government. Now we know that you guys have been sending us a lot of questions, and we ask you questions on both YouTube and Facebook, so we're going to pull a little bit from there and give you some information. One of the things that we got was from Ratna. Do you want to read it?
Okay, so Ratna says, I'm still waiting for my visa approval. Will this affect my application?
So Immigration New Zealand, as you heard us say at the beginning of this video, is hoping that it won't, but in a realistic point, and this is when we kind of give you a bit more opinion right now. We actually think that yes, this will delay application, and we think it may delay application for quite a few weeks, if not a few months. Immigration New Zealand is usually quite slow in processing application, and they're overwhelmed with a huge amount of work, and we don't really see a way for them to kind of be able to cope with the huge amount of extra workload and still be able to process all the application at the same time. So again, that is more our opinion. The official line is that should still be around the same timeline. So Michael was asking about self-isolation.
Okay, so Michael asked, things will change, prevention will stay. What are the options for self-isolation? What support is planned for travelers to achieve this self-isolation?
All right, Michael. So right now, self-isolation is not necessarily an issue anymore because most travelers cannot come to New Zealand. But if you are coming to New Zealand and you still need to self-isolate because you meet any of the criteria, your options are quite limited. And there is actually some really good resource about self-isolation on the Ministry of Health website. So I'm going to go through a few questions if you want. So what does self-isolation mean? That means staying at home as a precaution, and basic rules for self-isolation: stay at home, or if you're a traveler, that would be in a hotel room, and take simple common sense steps to avoid close contact with other people as much as possible, like if you were to have the flu, but like you taking it really seriously, basically. You need to keep yourself out of any situation where you will come in face-to-face contact with others who are less than 1 meter away, or make any contact that lasts longer than 15 minutes. That's basically it. So don't share, clean regularly, a wash towel, bathroom, all that. So that's basically what self-isolation is. But again, I don't think that will apply anymore, just because.
I mean, if you did come into New Zealand within 14 days, within 14 days ago, then the self-isolation rules still would apply. But yeah,
but by now you should have.
By now you probably have figured out how to self-isolate.
Alvin is asking.
Okay, Alvin asks, I'm planning to visit New Zealand for my honeymoon trip on the 6th of July. Based on the current situation, is it possible to travel there? Does the self-isolation rule will be under new government supervision, or is it just self-awareness?
Alright, so Alvin, we don't know just yet. Like, the short answer is like, we don't know. The situation is always evolving. If you look at the curve of how the virus has evolved around the other countries, New Zealand is literally just at the beginning, so we expect kind of the border closure to remain for quite a long time. But July is still a few months away, so I will say and I know it's not the right, it's not a fun answer, but I would say wait a couple of weeks before your planned trip and then call it then. We do have some travel plan as well, and we are waiting about a couple of weeks beforehand to see if we're moving forward or not with it. That's the only thing that we can tell you. Now, it is likely that if you come to New Zealand in July, if they have decided to revert the travel ban and they accept travelers, you still will need to isolate for 14 days. And then at that point, if you come to New Zealand for your honeymoon and you have to lock yourself in a hotel for 14 days, first, that's supposed to be what a honeymoon is all about, so yeah. But it may not be that fun in New Zealand. So it's up to you to make a call. But maybe, think think about around December, January next year, see what happens then. But yeah, that's basically where we at. Ryan has a question as well.
Okay, so Ryan asked, I tried calling Immigration New Zealand in Auckland to cancel my visa application, but no one picked up, just music and information on repeat for 30 minutes. I'm planning on rescheduling to October since going on April 6th is just too risky. These restrictions would probably still be in effect.
So April 6th is definitely pretty risky. The ban will be reviewed in 14 days, so that will be around the 3rd of April. Again, it's kind of like a gut feeling and everything, but I don't see it be lifted until quite a while. So yeah, you are correct, you should reschedule. Now, calling Immigration New Zealand takes a while. 30 minutes actually in normal time. So as I mentioned during this video right here, Ryan, you probably will be waiting on the phone for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and that's no joke. That is normal. When sometimes we do call Immigration New Zealand, it's not rare to have to wait 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
It's not rare at all. Alright, we also had a question from Brian that was asking if they were actually enforcing the self-isolation and if, or if they could still just travel around New Zealand and just be a bit more cautious. Now, the truth is that some people actually have been deported already because of that and be detained as well. So no, you cannot. You absolutely have to do that. There have been some activity providers around New Zealand that actually have literally told or called the police on some travelers which were not isolating. There are some accommodation providers that have done exactly the same thing, and there have been spot checks around. So in Christchurch, for example, there is a lady that was spot checked in one of the hostels over there, and she was found to not be isolating, so she had to be deported. So you definitely have to abide by the self-isolation rule. They're taking that very seriously, and so they should. So you have to abide by them. We also have another question from Bartalos.
Okay, so Bartalos asks, do you have any insider information if the Immigration New Zealand plans to extend visas that have their last entry date in this period?
So we don't have any inside information, but the information which is out there is that the visa will not be extended. So you will have to either reapply for another visa or apply for a different kind of like those kind of things, like extensions and everything. So they're not going to automatically extend it. You can apply for all those kind of things, and you will have to pay the fee. The whole process is going to happen all over again. So there is no way around that. All right, and the last thing that we want to mention is that there are a lot of companies, especially in the tourism industry, which are, well, basically suffering. I mean, we are as well. We are tourism companies, so right now we definitely financially suffering extremely hard, and so for this reason there are a lot of companies that just literally stop operation. So for example, if you were traveling on a Kiwi Experience bus and were traveling hop on and hop off thing around the country, they actually had their last bus today, and then the network will be shut down for the foreseeable future. And New Zealand is also cutting off a lot of different flights, and I think they're operating at like 5% capacity right now. It's absolutely ridiculous. So you have to be aware that even if you're making it to New Zealand right now, it will not be that easy to travel around. So it may be just the best thing to kind of wait. We receive hundreds of questions at the moment of should I postpone my trip. We usually say if you are planning to travel anything until the end of April, definitely just cancel, and after April just wait a couple of weeks before your trip and then call it at that point, But yeah, that's basically kind of our take on that. And again, the last part of that video, when we started answering questions, there is a lot of our opinion on there. It's not factual anymore, but the beginning of our video was all factual. About every information was pulled and read from the Ministry of Health as well as Immigration New Zealand. Is there anything you want to add?
I don't think so. I think that's all the information we can give for this week.
Alright guys, stay safe out there. Sorry for the not so fun video. We are gonna be here still doing our videos every single week. So we're here at 8 a.m. On Sunday New Zealand time, which is some of the times for you in the world. No, we don't have the board. Damn!
We can say it. We surely know it enough to say by heart.
It's 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. On the Saturday in France and UK. It is 2 p.m. EST and 11 a.m. PST in the US. I think one of those.
On a Saturday?
Yeah, on a Saturday. Oh, I don't know.
And in India, that is at
12:30
a.m. bright and early on a Sunday morning. And in Australia, that is at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning as well.
All right, stay safe out there and yeah, have fun. Bye-bye.
See you later.